Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Pondering the future of Windows again. I think we've covered this before, but the stories in the last week or so that we're going to refer to seem to be a bit more specific in terms of where it may be going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a nice warm autumn day here and maybe it's autumn for Windows as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a couple of interesting announcements from Microsoft in the last little while. To paraphrase it, essentially, there was Terry Myerson, the head of the Windows division, that left, and there was a restructuring which brought Windows under a new group called Experiences and Devices, but not specifically Windows, which is really important because if you think about the history of Microsoft, Windows was everything. The company was basically Windows was like what the iPhone is to Apple right now.
Yeah.
And this would seem to suggest that it doesn't quite have the sway that it used to have in the company, which whether that's good, whether that's bad, or it's just a symptom of things change and you've got to adapt with the times and go where the market's going in order to keep relevant. It's interesting that that's occurred. But side by side with that was this announcement of a new OS for Internet of Things devices, which, funny enough, was not based on Windows, but is based on Linux instead. Again, does that mean that Windows is starting to take a bit of a back seat to things? I don't know, but it's interesting, and I think there was that shift after I guess the Windows 8 debacle and Microsoft kind of missed the boat with mobile devices. They righted the ship with Windows 10, I guess, and then their focus is on transforming a lot of their products into basically services. So Office 365, the Azure cloud services, all of that stuff. And that's where they're generating their revenue. And it would seem that they're righting the ship more into that direction because they can see that that's where the market's going to be and where most of their opportunities are going to be in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition to a new business model, and they've been undertaking that for a number of years now. I mean, Azure is very popular platform, very effective cloud-based platform. So it's natural that they would move there. And I think this is the realization of the post-PC era. Mobile devices require cloud access, and I think this is just Microsoft adapting their business model to that. It's kind of sad in some ways, but it was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So many cloud-based services now, everything from, project management tools right through to, Microsoft Office, and using them in the cloud and no longer on your machine is I think it's a natural evolution. But, I think it's a big step for Microsoft.
Yeah, and probably one that they need to take. They've got that. I don't think they've got much choice in the matter, given the way it's all going. I mean, as a contrast, you think of the heyday of Windows 95, probably going through to Windows XP, where really the real reason why you have an operating system is really to access the products and the services that it's like a window into those things anyway, and it's just getting to a point where all of that is transitioning over to the cloud. And we were just discussing briefly before we got on about the fact that you really don't even need to purchase an Office subscription, because all you need to do is get a free account. I'd have to double check, of course. They probably restrict functionality. They still need money out of you, but you can log into the Office Online site and get reasonably good versions of Word, Excel, and all that streamed straight through to your browser. So
that's an interesting point, because if you think about all of the software that we use in this day and age, and remembering that Microsoft Windows was really an extension for running Office, exactly what you're saying. Having those applications, those Office applications, actually physically in your device is really, that's so old school now. You think about every app we use and any of the tools we use, they're all cloud-based. So it was inevitable, I think.
Probably the thing that will really put it over the top, and it'll get there sooner rather than later, is just the persistent connection, the really high-speed persistent connection to the net, so that you get virtually no downtime on any device that you pick up in any location. Now, I reckon we're almost there anyway. It'd be hard to you'd probably have to go drive out in the countryside somewhere into the middle of nowhere to not get a signal somewhere. But maybe with the advent of 5G, if that gets rolled out, I understand that there's probably a lot of rollout that has to happen with that for that to occur, and it might not be for a couple of years before they really get that up and running. But once that comes out and you get that really strong, persistent connection anywhere in the world, then all your device has to do, because it'll be always connected, is it becomes more of an instant window into the services that you want to access.
That's right. And I think that's where it's all headed. So post-PC is here, I think.
Yeah,
it's clear.
Absolutely. I did want to lament on the fact that, it's sort of like the end of an era in the way, because, we've discussed Windows before, and a bit like Mac OS as well. I mean, the only difference there, though, is that Apple's probably in a much better position to let that go if they need to, whereas Microsoft isn't. They didn't make a comfortable, not even, I don't even know if they have effectively made the transition into the mobile world. It seems like they're doing a reasonable job on cloud services, but just they completely missed the boat with the mobile stuff. I think
this will be Microsoft's third attempt to get the mobile world.
But the irony is that I guess throughout all this time, there's been much made of the fact they missed that boat, and the Windows 8 era was a really big misstep for them for several years. But if you have a look at it, they actually are making lots of money out of their subscription-based services and even their business-related, corporate-related services, which they might be IBM-like, that they don't grab headlines, they're not interesting. It's not like the new red iPhone coming out or something like that, where people get excited about the latest flashy thing. But these I guess the business models that they're implementing now and the money and revenue that they're generating from it are significant. It's just that I'm sure Microsoft wants to be still considered the flashy, exciting company of what it was in the 90s, but it may be that it just can't recapture that now.
I don't know. I think, everything turns, and maybe they'll get there. I mean, they're in social media. They've got LinkedIn. They're moving to a cloud-based system. They're a big company. They're not a silly company. So I think they'll work their way back. But, you might be right. Maybe they'll never quite recapture that glory again.
Well, I think in the heyday, Windows was effectively 90% of Microsoft. It was everything. And I'd read somewhere that the latest percentage of how much of its business it makes up now is, might be in the teens in terms of percentage. Yeah. And that's kind of interesting. And Office is obviously doing really well still, and which makes sense because people still use it and it's where they're productive, and the cloud services are obviously becoming a really big part of it. But I think it can't be understated just how big a change it was companies have gone out of business by not making big changes, and Microsoft seems to be avoiding that, which is probably a good thing, because, there needs to be a couple of these big tech companies, sort of out there and competing with each other, and they should all be doing different things, I guess, and offering different services to people that are useful. And it may be that it's just we're going to be using a combination of all of their services together, as opposed to being locked into one or the other, even though they'd love that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. We're all still using Windows, of course. Windows 10 is still doing well, and I don't foresee it going away anytime soon. But it may be that sort of thing that sort of slowly fades out over time, maybe transitions into another form, and eventually it'll be something else. And you go, oh yeah, what happened to that Windows thing of whenever it was?
Yeah, well, a bit like the CD, really. I think that's what we're seeing, and it's had a long lifespan. I mean, what would it be since the 80s? So it's 30 years we've had of Windows, and 20 whatever years of Windows 95, which of course I think was the high point probably for them. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, watch us there, and also subscribe to our podcast, etc., and listen to us on your devices. And we'd greatly appreciate you checking us out there, and hope you enjoy the content. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.